Bring us inside of this process. What were your conversations like with Jack Dorsey, and what now are the expectations of this?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Sonali. So, having spoken to Jack and being a part of the process, I think, the major thing that stuck out would be, the general goal that we have in BTrust, which is to grow the Bitcoin development ecosystem in Africa, as well as India. And, now primarily our main focus is to build out that, the Bitcoin ecosystem in Africa primarily. And then as we build our capacity, we expand to other regions in global south like India as well. So, the major thing that we're trying to prioritize is transparency, because we recognize that this is a novel venture, so to speak, a novel initiative. So we want to make sure that we're as open as possible in terms of where the funds are going to, how we're going about it in terms of operations and things like that. And in all honesty, the expectation from Jack and the rest of the team is, that this is all up to the board itself. We're going to be the ones to set up, principles, guidance. It's basically completely all in our hands in terms of how we determine the future of, both the disbursements as well as operations and how it works. So, the expectation obviously is for us to grow the ecosystem, like I mentioned, and that will primarily not be what other people might have been thinking, which is, venture capital style equity funding. So we're going to steer clear away from that. It will be most likely, primarily funding through grant-based funding to developers working in the space that are working on, the Bitcoin ecosystem. So things like working on Bitcoin Core and some of the projects in the space. So that's primarily what you'll be seeing. And, we're still getting things set up, but, we've made quite a lot of progress, and we'll continue to communicate that progress to the individuals, to the public, so to speak, on Twitter.
Well, what do you think?
That's kind of where we're at.
What can you tell us about the types of projects you're funding and where the money may end up going ultimately? What is the goal here in terms of deploying these funds?
Yeah, so in terms of the general goal, like I said, will be the maturation of the Bitcoin ecosystem here in Africa. And primarily funding will go towards, like I said, grant-based funding initially. So it'll be developers working in the ecosystem, and gradually we'll be expanding, some of where the funds will be going to be dispersed. And with regards to more generally when that will begin, like I said, we're still setting things up. So, I know the expectation is that we're probably going to be deploying really, really soon, but these things take time in terms of setting up. Like I mentioned, we have to do quite a lot in terms of setting it up from scratch. I want to take our time. We don't want to rush this. We don't want to get bust and trip ourselves over. So we'll most likely be, in terms of deployment, I can't give an actual date, but very, very soon. Like I said, we'll be communicating this all.
You mentioned Bitcoin a few times here. I'm wondering how you're thinking about Bitcoin versus other crypto assets. There's clearly some preference here to go towards Bitcoin. It's in the name of the trust, after all. And why is that exactly? What do the other currencies not have that Bitcoin may be offering to nations in Africa and India?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like you mentioned, the main focus with BTrust is to be solely focused on Bitcoin. And the primary reason is, Bitcoin is an open monetary network. It is the most secure, and, it has a lot of attendant benefits. I could run through them, but I'll just highlight a few of them. So primarily, we have quite a lot of unbanked individuals, millions, and sometimes the numbers could actually run into billions, I think. And Bitcoin is a bank for those that are actually unbanked. The cost of setting up a Bitcoin wallet is relatively cheap. All you need to have is a smartphone and internet connection. And, with regards to the opportunities that it does provide to individuals, we're talking about financial sovereignty. So, this allows them to be able to be insulated from, government risk in terms of seizure of funds and assets and all that kind of stuff. Another thing is it's also a hedge against inflation. Another thing is, there are a few other benefits in terms of remittance, which is a huge one, especially with Lightning, given how much mature Lightning has been. So there are a couple of benefits that we see in terms of Bitcoin that other cryptos simply do not have. And at the end of the day, Bitcoin is a movement. That's what we see. It's more than just, what you see with other projects like being companies.
And it's funny you mentioned Lightning, because you see firms like Cash App integrating the Lightning network. I'm wondering how integral that is for companies to be able to make this mission possible.
Yeah, it's very, very important in terms of, like I said, they'll be plugging in directly to an open monetary network that allows individuals to have cross-border payments that are cheap and global and instant and free. Well, almost free. But, so the point would be going more towards the future. What we look at, or what we see that would be, the way forward would be a lot of these companies, whether it's Twitter or some of these other apps, integrating to Lightning in terms of allowing individuals to access this open monetary network. Another thing is, wallets integrating that. So that has already started happening in Africa, in a company we're invested in called BitNob. They managed to integrate Lightning and actually did a transaction over from Chicago to Nigeria instantly. It was within like 10 seconds or so. So we see the future is instant, it's global, it's Bitcoin.